In the panel that we're going to have now, in the 1 hour, we want to focus on opportunities. We want to focus on the opportunities for trade and investment, and then we've assembled a panel that I think is most capable of providing us with that, if only because they are themselves on a day-to-day basis involved in the endeavor of trade and investment and building bridges between the Caribbean and the continent, and also within the continent and within the Caribbean. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first panelist, Ms. Kay-Ann Greenidge, who is the president of CAIPA, which is the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. Please welcome her. Thank you. Our second panelist is Dr. Amani Ashford, who is the president of the Africa Business Council, friend and sister, who began these engagements with us back in 2021, when the dream of having what has emerged as the marquee trade and investment event in the Caribbean has emerged. So Dr. Ashford, please welcome her. I want to welcome a very, very experienced banker, professional, and development economist, our own Richard Duncan from Grenada, whose reputation precedes him. Richard is the Grenada Investment Migration Agency's representative. I think he's the chairman of the IMA, and it's welcome to have him. Again, I didn't hear that loud enough. I want to welcome Dr. Tibor Christian, the Chief Financial Officer from the Guyana Office for Investment, a country that's achieved 2 years ago 80% growth in GDP, the fastest in the world. Please welcome him. I want to welcome Mr. Ugo Ikemba, Managing Partner at the Caribbean Venture Capital Fund. Very profound perspectives he has on how we drive these investment opportunities. Thank you. And I want to welcome an addition to the panel that's not on your program, but I'd like you to note and inscribe her name on your on the documents that you have, whether in French or English, Dr. Simone Vidal. Dr. Simone Vidal is a senior lecturer from UWI who is involved in pioneering cancer research in CARICOM, in a very, very unique field. Please welcome her. Fantastic. So we want to begin by asking Ms. Kay Greenidge a question regarding what CAIPA has been doing to drive trade and investment opportunities, both in CARICOM, but also trade and investment opportunities between CARICOM and the continent, building that bridge. Give us a little bit of what CAIPA has been doing and where you see these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a good afternoon or good morning still to everyone. Yeah, so CAIPA is the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. So basically, we are the overall body which really seeks to promote investment for 23 Caribbean countries. There is a saying, we are better together. So sometimes we need that overarching body, and sometimes we need that group and that team approach in order to unlock various opportunities out there from the international market. And sometimes going at it alone will not just suffice. So that is really what CAIPA does. CAIPA is the voice that goes forward to the international organizations to seek assistance in terms of development for various projects, various sectors that any of or collectively the Caribbean countries want to promote or to grow at any point in time. We have been looking to promote the countries as a collective, as a Caribbean community, throughout various areas globally, because we do these promotions globally, including Africa. You would have heard of some of the things in terms of the visit to Ghana. Some of the KIPA members were involved in that. So there are various activities going on. Of course, throughout 2025 and 2026, there will be an enhanced focus on the African market and self-cooperation between KIPA and the African continent, and looking to actually take the group of the 23 countries to the African continent to do an inward mission to that continent. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to do.
Fantastic, thank you. And as we meet here, there's so much work taking place that will require the services of KIPA and its knowledge base as we talk about CARICOM, Brazil, the South-South, the opportunities there to displace and de-risk what's happening in relation to the inflation pressures coming through the United States. There is going to be a lot of work for KIPA. I want to go to Dr. Ashford, who, as I indicated earlier, in 2021, we had this vision and signed an agreement, the Afri-Exim Bank, CPSO, Africa Business Council, Tripartite agreement, and we've been working under that. Dr. Ashford, if you could tell us what you've been doing as part of the work under the Tripartite arrangement as an Africa Business Council. And I'll come back to you a little later because I want to know how we can really intensify the pace of work. But give us a good sense of the work under the Tripartite agreement for the time being. Thank you.
So thank you very much, my brother, my dear sisters and brothers from Africa and the Caribbean. I'm so happy to be here because now we are materializing this MOU. So the Africa Business Council, established by the heads of states of the African Union to be the voice of the African private sector. And Caribbean being the sixth region of the diaspora of African Union, I am happy to be here in our sixth region. So the vision of the CARICOM Private Sector Organization and Africa Business Council, really supported by Afri-Exim, is to see how we have the Africa-Caribbean Business Council to operationalize what we are talking about, trade and investment. So Africa Business Council, our founding vision is a competitive, borderless, innovative Africa for trade, investment, and industrialization. So those three pillars actually comes together with our vision as Africa-Caribbean Business Council. So Caribbean is more than 45 million people. Africa is 1.3 billion people, being the sixth diaspora. How we together can make it happen, trade among ourselves. And not only that, but also we need to invest and to industrialize. So those three pillars comes with how we do it together. So Africa Caribbean Business Council is really based to see how we build capacity of our African and Caribbean private sector, including SMEs, women and youth. Because again, SMEs are the base of our economy. The second issue is really what areas and sectors, and we have heard together all the sectors, including from tourism, the healthcare sector, the fashion industry, the agriculture, the aquaculture. I mean, there is a lot that we have already identified as Africa Caribbean Business Council to work together. So while identifying this, we need to have a mapping exercise of what is existing on the continent and in the Caribbean, and how we mix and match business linkages together in each sector. So we build on our expertise on both regions, and we also build the capacity of the private sector in different, and then we open market trade among ourselves with a Made in Africa product and a Made in the Caribbean product, which is actually what we are trying to see to substitute what we're bringing from outside, whether the continent or Caribbean. So the whole vision of the Africa Caribbean Business Council is for the prosperity of both of us in Africa and the Caribbean, and to see the role of the private sector, including SMEs, women and youth, to see how we are going further with this vision of the Caribbean as sixth diaspora, but also have an impact on our daily base of our people of the continent and here in the Caribbean. So I'm so happy, my dear brother, that Africa Caribbean Business Council now have went through these stages, and I think we are now going to we have already identified sector, but putting now the plan of action of materializing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashford. I'm going to turn to Richard Duncan, who from his own professional sojourn through banking, investment projects, and certainly his very relevant positioning in the Investment Migration Agency. And I'm going to ask him in this time of turbulence, where there is no doubt a lot of questioning around the longevity of the investment migration programs. How is the Grenada Investment Migration Agency beginning to revision and reposition itself and its program to benefit from some of the opportunities that, Richard, I know you would be aware of, and those that are coming to the agency, those in the ether even? How are you repositioning yourselves to benefit from some of these opportunities? And where do you see some of these opportunities to the extent that you want to reveal that to the audience? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Antoine. Let me start off by following in the footsteps of Governor Timothy N.J. Antoine and Mia Motley, who in these times are looking to Robert Nesta Marley's philosophy for guidance. So Governor Antoine would turn to Buffalo Soldier, fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. Mia Motley has turned to emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. I have turned to I shot the sheriff. Sheriff John Brown always hated me. For what? I don't know. That has been written to Sheriff John Brown always hated me. For what? I now know. Every time I plant a seed, he says, kill it before it grows. Every time I plant a seed, he says, kill them before they grow. So the investment migration space, the CBI space embarked upon by the 5 countries in the ECCU is one that clearly is under siege by Sheriff John Brown. Our role, our task, is to protect, promote, and prosper these programs. So we all agree among ourselves that if these programs do not mutate over time, obviously, they are likely to perish. So we have taken a number of steps over the last 2-3 years to treat with some of the risks that they face and to work with our development partners to ensure that we protect and promote these programs. So when people ask how long do these programs will last, or will they last, my question is how long do you want them to last? And the philosophy is simple. Only that which mutates as the environment changes can survive. So for me, these programs are around for a long time as we improve their design and architecture. That said, as far as opportunities are concerned, there are 2 sides to it. First of all, the projects that we have embarked upon, the investment opportunities, to my mind, have been driven primarily by developers. And as we have heard, they were concentrated in the area of tourism mainly, and there are good reasons for that. However, I think that we need to design projects that we know are good for this region, that has the potential to transform the region and allow developers to compete for those projects, rather than they coming to say to us, this is what they want to do in the sub-region. As far as and we are on that trajectory. As far as where we look for the developers, clearly we have to look to Africa. I think CEO Thomas Anthony said a while ago the work we are doing, or did last month in Kenya. We have been doing a lot of work in Nigeria. We have several investors. It's a good source market for us. But again, those investments are going into projects in the hospitality, in the hotel sector. That we wish to change. From where I sit, unless we can produce things, we talk about industrialization, that are price and quality competitive, then we're not in the hunt. So for Grenada a project that could result in the lowering significantly of the cost of electricity, which is a main ingredient in any production process now, we will be struggling. So for my mind, strategically, that's a big project that we should embark upon, and there are successful developers in Africa who have done it, and to my mind, that should be on the cards. The other side of the equation is to work with your, what I call your CBI diaspora, because the one-off investment made as a pathway to citizenship is just that. But if you can woo and negotiate and to encourage them to do second-generation investments in the space, it will be a good thing for us. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
I want to thank Richard for that, because I too believe that the fact that as a country, certainly Grenada and the region, many of our countries are becoming depopulated. If you look at Grenada in the 1960s, what our population was then and our population today, you get a sense of, again, you have even greater demands on the infrastructure, the capital expenditures from governments, but you have a declining population to carry that. There are a lot of reasons why I think what we just heard from Richard Duncan is absolutely on point, and we ought to do as he's urged. I want to turn to my colleague from Guyana. So much happening in Guyana, so much opportunity. And I want you to give us a sense of where you see these investment opportunities. And again, I want you to have fun and you can show off and tell us about the wonderful things happening there. But where do you see these investment opportunities in Guyana? And how do you see these contributing to both what we want to achieve in CARICOM and what we want to achieve between CARICOM and Africa? I want you to also bring in that mix what's happening with Guyana and Brazil, but not to get stuck there. Yeah? Show off. Tell us about the bridge that Brazil, brings to all of this is really going to be an important perspective. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I'm happy that you told me that I can show off, right? But secondly, it's a little disheartening to have to speak after the only Grenadian on the panel, so that puts me in a kind of peculiar position. However, I was intending to take the risk of creating a partial bias for Guyana because, as we know, everything or most of the things we do or hope to do is underpinned by energy. There's no question. If you look at our recent central bank report, it shows a $3 billion US trade surplus, mostly because of oil and gas. Yep. But for us to have full context of Guyana, we need to understand where Guyana is, where Guyana was, and what Guyana hopes to be, not only for ourselves, but for the region. First of all, we're the only, one of the only CARICOM nations that are not part of the Caribbean Sea, so it puts us in a unique location. We're 83,000 square miles, and if you look at the geography, we could fit most of the rest of the Caribbean within our country. So, that's an indication of a plethora of arable land for agriculture. So, bear that in mind as I move forward. But if I can cast our minds before oil, before Guyana had oil, what were the strengths of Guyana? The strengths was agriculture, mining for precious metals like gold, diamond, bauxite, etc. We also have unique ecotourism. And what are we hoping to achieve? What do we want the legacy of Guyana to be? Do we want our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to say, oh, I'm from the petrostate of Guyana? No, we don't want that. What we are doing with the proceeds from the oil and gas is to modernize those industries that were there before oil and gas. And I'd like to say that's where the real opportunities exist. Whilst everybody's inherently excited about oil and gas, and we are too, the real opportunities in Guyana really exist in those traditional sectors that were there before, because we are adamant about creating a diverse economy That is, to use the word for this forum, a resilient economy. So, what do we do with all the arable land? And we've already started to see the benefits of the byproduct of oil, which is the natural gas. We're currently constructing and soon to commission a 300 megawatt power plant that is going to reduce the cost of energy, for now, in Guyana, by more than 50%. So your first opportunity will be large-scale agriculture, large-scale farming. Now, to give you some more context about Guyana, we only have 750,000 persons and 83,000 square miles. When we grow the food, and with cheaper energy, we hope to add value by manufacturing and agro-processing. There is no way that we can consume all that food in country on our own. So the next opportunity that exists is agro-processing, manufacturing, how are we going to add value? And obviously, the first thought process is to do that by way of collaboration with entities that already know how to do it. And later on, when we talk about how we're going to make these investments a reality, I can talk a little bit more about our relaxed investment regime. But moving forward, we're going to grow the food, we're going to add value, but then that creates another sector downstream, which is logistics. How are we going to move the food, not only around the region, but to places like Africa? So when you think through Guyana, the first thing that comes to mind is, double-digit growth in GDP for the last 3 years, oil. But when you look closer, you realize the real opportunities is way beyond oil. It's the modernization of the known industries where the real opportunities reside. Yep, I'd like to stop there for now.
Thank you for that, and only to say that I think you're speaking after Richard Duncan is well suited. Richard will tell you that this Grenada community has welcomed for many, many decades our comrades from Guyana, and many of them are integrated, deeply integrated in our Malu. So we view you as one of us, and I want to say that also it would be a missed opportunity not to say that your president has done an excellent job of leading on CARICOM agriculture, and I'd like the audience to applaud that, please. And only to say that this partnership that the heads of government created, which established the CPSO, has really borne fruit, because the 25 by 25 plan actually came from the private sector and the CPSO at the invitation of heads and was endorsed by heads, and it's now become a blueprint. But I want to go on to my colleague which deals with the Venture Capital Fund. And of course, you know, Mr. Teboa Christian, that this morning there was the release of a top 100 tech stocks, early stage. And many funds were celebrating whether any of their tech stocks were in that top 100. And certainly from your perspective, I wanted to get a sense of where you see, coming from, you know, venture capital and other financial instruments, not just VCs. I know you have an interest. Where you see the opportunities within CARICOM. Do we have institutions like yours in CARICOM that are fit for purpose? And where do you see the opportunities between CARICOM and the continent? I wanted you to give us a sense of whether you see other institutions in CARICOM that's fit for purpose like yours, and then how you see the opportunities and how you've been structuring yourself to assist in enabling these opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I answer the question directly and specifically, I wanted to just give a little bit of background. Vision and execution. What we've seen with Afri-Caribbean Bank has been vision and execution, even when it didn't seem to make any sense. Afri-Caribbean Bank just kept coming. And they had one idea, which is to bring Africa and the Caribbean together. And they've come many times in many situations, and all of us have met so many times in the Caribbean, and now it's sort of time to do less talking and more execution, as you've heard so many people say. And so, by way of background, my name is Ugo Ikemba, and I'm a venture capital fund manager initiated by the government of Jamaica. I'm from Nigeria, and I live in Jamaica, so I guess you could call me a Nigerian now. And that's part of this process of bringing us together. The whole point of our fund was to create an Afri-Caribbean fund. Taking the lessons, I spent 20 years in venture capital, private equity in Africa, and bringing it to work in the Caribbean. And so, to sort of pivot to the question you're asking, I see so many opportunities. So when you come from a land of 1.5 or so billion people, myriads of different, when I say a land, as in the entire continent of Africa, or from Nigeria, 200 or so million people, you see myriads of problems, but you see myriads of solutions. So when I come to the Caribbean and I see wonderful islands, wonderful people, I just see opportunity. So I was so glad to come to this conference to talk about the opportunity and the opportunity to sort of mind meld between the African people and the Caribbean people to come up with solutions that we can sell to the world. And the reason I say that is it doesn't matter what you do that you sell to 300,000 people, 1 million people. You need to sell to the 7 billion people on the planet Earth for you to make a dent. And that has to be the vision from day one. How do I conquer the world? And how do I do that? Through recognizing opportunity. Now, nothing happens without some financing and funding. So when Afri-Caribbean came in with a power pack punch of funding, things are now starting to happen. So I would like to reference to you that there are many organizations. We work with the Inter-American Development Bank. We work with, actually, one of our investors is Burna Boy. So people have talked about, the creative industry. We thought partnering with Burna Boy and coming into the Caribbean could unleash a lot of partnerships within the creative industry. We're also looking at tech and tech-enabled opportunities across literally, there are inefficiencies everywhere that technology can handle. And I would put it to you before I sort of hand it over to the next person that technology, artificial intelligence, for example, is the new gunpowder. It's the new weapon that if we don't get control of, the world will put us back again where they put us several years ago that President Obasanjo talked about yesterday, back in the pit. Now we have funding, we have the people, as in, if you add the Caribbean and Africans together, there's a lot of people, and we have the technology to overcome. So maybe I'll talk a bit more in detail on the opportunities as we move forward.
I want to thank you for that, and I think, again, this panel was obviously well thought out when we pulled everyone together. I hadn't recognized that it was the Jamaican government that had pulled you in on this, and I'm really happy that is the case. And I'm also happy that you meandered into the creative industries. I want to make a little shift because I think this panel has to be recorded as a panel that introduced a subject that we've not spoken about a lot in the conference so far. No downside on the conference. It's that it's typically not something we address in the investment space. But I want you to just allow me for 10 seconds to read this for you. In the Caribbean, the most prevalent form of cancer in women is breast cancer. It is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among women in the region. And then I want to switch over. All of this is from AI and also from some research that was done. Switch over to the continent and what it had to say. So it goes on to say that in the continent, in Africa, breast cancer is the most prevalent form of cancer among women, that the trend globally is moderately downwards, but the trend in the continent is going up. and that by 2040, without interventions, and this part goes for both Africa and the Caribbean, we are looking at massive increases in the incidence of breast cancer. Why do I bring this here? I bring this here because at this time, we're having the process leading to the 4th high-level meeting on NCDs, where ministers will agree in September on a new NCD agenda. This agenda was brought to the global community by CARICOM. And I want to stop here by saying that this is why we've brought Dr. Simone Bedal, who is a senior researcher, senior lecturer from the university. She is the recipient of the prestigious Ansa McCall Awards when her work drew the attention of the community. And I think it is timely in talking about growth and progress to address this matter. Dr. Bedal.
Thank you, Dr. Anton, for having me here. Just to give a brief introduction to my journey as a cancer researcher. I wasn't looking at treating cancers for Black people. I was just looking at treating cancers. And I recognized that as a Jamaican, and I'm certain as a Caribbean, we are sitting on a lot of natural resources which remain unknown, untouched. And so my journey was, can we identify Jamaican natural products that can treat cancers? And at the end of that, we found several of our products that were more effective in killing cancer cells than known drugs, and several of them that were safer because they did not harm the normal cells compared to known drugs. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. So that's the first stage in drug development when it comes on to cancer research. The second stage is looking at the effects of these compounds in animals, and the final stage is in humans. So of course I was saying we need to go on to the second stage, and to do that we need funding. While I was trying to get the funding, I was able to sit with this data that we published, that we got awards for, and that I was in the clouds. Wow, this is amazing. And realizing that all the tools I had used in my project, tools that any typical cancer researcher around the world uses, were all from white people. And so it stopped me in my track to answer questions. If I tested these natural products in cells from more people, would the results be the same? That was a fundamental question. And so I started to search for cell lines from more people, from the Caribbean. And at that time, I couldn't find any. And so it led me down to more questions. And I wanted to zone in on cancers of concern to us, breast and prostate. And what I realized was 98% of all prostate cancer cell lines, so these are tools that we use as cancer researchers in the first stage of drug development, 98% of them are from white people. Less than 2% from our own people, and none existed from the Caribbean at that time. None existed from Africa at that time. So it caused me to change my desire to go to step 2, to go back to step 1, and create our own cell lines. Why shouldn't we have that? That's the opportunity there. But when I tried to get help or assistance from persons overseas who'd done this work, they told me not to do it. They told me it was too challenging, that especially if I'm going to be doing it from a setting like Jamaica where I don't readily have access to reagents. And I, of course, did not listen, because I'm like, that's not a good enough reason for us not to do it. So I was successful in getting funding, and instead of going to step 2, I said, okay, let's have our lab, let's do this. And it took us 5 years, and that is why I got the award. We developed the first cell line from the Caribbean, which was a prostate cancer cell line. And since then, we've expanded that to 6 cell lines, 3 prostate, 3 breast cancer cell lines. They told us we couldn't do it. So here I am. We need to not sit and wait on the global researchers to do research that don't benefit us. Because at the end of the day, while cancer remains the second leading cause of death globally, it is on the decline. But in the Caribbean and in Africa, incidence rates are higher, mortality rates are higher. So the drugs that are being developed are not being used on our people. Clinical trials where you have persons who are enrolled to test these drugs, more than 90% of persons enrolled are white persons, less than 3% representation from our black people. We need to have a center that does all this, where we can have our persons come and get tested on the drugs that we develop for us.
This is a call to our civilization. And I myself have made no secret of the fact, and I was surprised how many people around me made it a secret. But I myself got afflicted with cancer. And happily, I had early detection. But I lost my student, a friend of all of us in this room from Grenada, Brian Francis, who was an excellent economist, and so many others to this issue, that this is the call, this is the task of our generation. And I certainly wanted to put this here because we have to turn this into an opportunity. We have to turn this into an opportunity for financing, and hence I want to turn directly again to you, Mr. Christian, in asking you, having heard this opportunity, yes, both of you, Mr. Christian and also, yes, I know you're both confused because Guyana has a lot of what's happening. And Guyana is next to Brazil. And Brazil has one of the world's concentration in this hemisphere of people like us. I wanted to talk to both of you about how you see this emerging as an investment opportunity, both Mr. Ikemba and also Mr. Christian. I'm putting you on the spot because I think leaving this in the lead up to the fourth high-level meeting, this forum has to say something on what we intend to do about this affliction that can negatively impact and interfere with all our objectives for economic growth and transformation. So I want you to just decide who will go first, but I wanted to get a quick response from you on the opportunities that we see to fund this. Richard, I also want to ask you about what opportunity you see in us restyling some of what we do with the diaspora and with Afri-Caribbean Bank to address this before I get back to some of the more earthy type issues, yes?
So how I can respond to that question from the perspective of how we can link ourselves to Brazil, because I think it's important to understand how the opportunity can become real, and then we can move on to how we can finance that opportunity. So the government of Guyana has already started a road from Region 10 in Guyana all the way to Letem, which is at the border of Brazil. So having access to Brazil becomes a lot easier. It may not be known to a lot of persons that Brazil is our neighbor, but we have to take at least 2 flights to get to Brazil if we don't want to go down what is primarily right now a way called a gravel road. So at the border is a town called Letem. We have intentions of creating Terminal 1 there, an international airport there, which will give us access. The road and the airport gives us easier access to northern Brazil, which is home to about 17 million persons. Now, having Terminal 1 at Letem then gives the Caribbean at large and everybody access to northern Brazil. Good. From the investment regime side, all investments coming into Guyana that are pioneering in nature has a wider scope for government assistance by way of fiscal concessions. So I wanted to point that out before we can talk about how we may be able to make it a reality on the funding side.
Thank you. Part of the reason we came to be as the Caribbean Venture Capital Fund was that the government of Jamaica recognized that a lot of institutions, dare I say banks, are risk averse, not just in the Caribbean, globally. The reason for venture capital is to take risks. And when you have something with a significant addressable market as cancer, cancer drugs, cancer research, that's of interest to venture capital, right? Like you said, probably everybody in this room, including me, has had lost a family member to cancer or has somebody going through cancer right now. So whenever entrepreneurs come to me with a transaction, I first look at what's the addressable market. So the addressable market here is 1.5, 2 billion African people. So it's a pretty decent market for that. And the impact of you solving cancer, when I say solving cancer, at least alleviating to solving cancer for the global African diaspora is immense. I think that's bigger than Facebook and Google and everybody else put together. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan.
You want me to come in now?
Yes, I just wanted you to give us a sense of whether you have any sort of brainwave on what we could possibly do with the diaspora in linking some of this to some of the new areas I think we could potentially drift into.
Well, before I go into that, I just want to put my hand up as a 15-year prostate cancer survivor. But also to say that I lost my brother at 57 from brain cancer a year ago. That said, it's all around us. So what we have done this year was to modify the thinking around the CBI program and created what we call an enhanced local developer participation option, because the programs are seen and viewed as something there for the big international developers with the mega projects. So by lowering what you might call the barriers to entry into the program and making it easier for local developers to come on board and access those resources, we believe we are opening up new opportunities, and I'm sure there are other things we can do along the way. Thanks.
Thank Richard for that. Colleagues, I wanted to just show your appreciation to Dr. Bidal, and of course to recognize that this is a massive opportunity for us on the finance side, including linking with colleagues in North America who have already indicated an interest, and I will hook both of you up with them in participating in this work. But I want to switch by asking my colleagues the last round of questions. What can we do to intensify and accelerate the progress towards increasing and enhancing and growing African-Caribbean trade? Let me tell you why. Even within CARICOM, the opportunities that we have, and the most recent one was an opportunity led by the Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Affairs from Barbados. He really worked hard and got the support of the government of Grenada and others to make the CARICOM market fit for purpose for the investments that we have to make and the investments that are already there in paints. If you look at every single study, including those from North America, Canada, Europe, the paint and coatings industry in CARICOM comes up as one of the most viable opportunities for investment. Here's the thing. It took us 2.5 years to get the agreement in CARICOM, 2.5 years to drive this investment. And there are other opportunities in CARICOM that I see the Minister of Agriculture, Lennox Andrews here, for instance, on pork production, where we are facing subsidized pork from other countries, to remain unnamed, massively so. And we have the capacity in Suriname and Guyana and Belize and Jamaica and Brazil and Barbados, but we're dithering about doing what is required to put the environment in place to drive these investments. So pork and paints came on at the same time. Pork is still unresolved, and we're talking about agriculture. Paints took 2.5 years. Pork will take even longer. We can't wait for 3 and 4 and 5 years to drive one opportunity to have common CARICOM trade so the private sector can invest. And then you take the issue of how we deal with that across the divide. And so the question to the panel is, how and what can we do to accelerate, to intensify, to drive what needs to be done in CARICOM and certainly on the continent side so that we can get the kind of environment we need and anything else to grow this trade and investment opportunity that we see to make this bridge complete. How do we make the bridge complete quickly without having to wait for another generation? Over to you, Kay.
When I was a banker, Richard, we had a saying, you need to fix the plane in the air. You're correct, we just simply can't wait. We have to push the agenda. Do not be distracted. Keep the focus. And most importantly, we have to continue to work together to build those relationships that we've already now put in place through forums like these and many other situations that are happening, whether it's Caribbean, on the Caribbean side, whether it's Caribbean to Africa, whether it's Africa to Africa. We have to understand that we are a great people, we are a deserving people, and that we can actually do it. For example, the wonderful work that Dr. Bernal has done. And to take that work and to push it in the forefront, that now that can be global work and be recognized on the global stage. That is what we deserve, and we have to continue to push that.
Dr. Ashford?
So my brother, just let me put my other hat as a professor of pediatrics and the world president-elect of the Medical Women International Association. And coming back to my sister, because we need to do joint research. And I think Professor Dabi is the chair of the healthcare industry of the Africa Business Council, and the second panel will be also speaking for that, because he just signed to invest in Zambia, the first cancer treatment center in Zambia.
Absolutely.
So that is the kind of thing that we have to promote, our joint research from Africa and the Caribbean. That's why the healthcare infrastructure cluster is there. We have also to see how we invest in all the healthcare, whether it's cancer treatment center or other things. That's very important to have joint ventures. This is one of the identified sectors that we already alluded to with reference to healthcare, as I mentioned, other things like agriculture, tourism, fashion industry, all this. But I come back to the issue of how we accelerate it. So how to accelerate, I call it the triad of empowerment, 3 pillars. First pillar is private sector strengthening, including SMEs, women, and youth. So we have to empower our private sector in Africa and the Caribbean by information, by capacity building, by awareness about the ACFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. How can they trade under ACFTA within Africa and the Caribbean? All this is empowering the private sector. The second pillar is policy advocacy. Yes. What have the governments can do to promote our intra-Africa-Caribbean trade, our investment? What are the incentives for the private sector to invest, whether in Africa or the Caribbean? Financial inclusion, how we come back for financing of our joint projects. All this really is about the policy. The third pillar, I call it the product development and partnerships, all PPP. So the product development is how we have a product, whether African or Caribbean, that is high quality, that is competitive, value added, beneficiated. My brother talked about minerals. We're under Africa Business Council, we're organizing the CAMRAD, which is the Congress for African Mineral Resources Development, how we make value addition beneficiation for our minerals. Because now all the multinational companies are taking our minerals, going with it, and we don't have beneficiation on the continent or in the region. So this is, again, what we say, we need to have a product that we can trade among ourselves, which is competitive, which is high quality, which is value-added, beneficiated, and standardized. Again, for standardization, we need to see how we have harmonized standards among ourselves. If we have pharmaceuticals, if we have medical consumer supplies, how we are going to register them. So I call it the triad of empowerment. I think this is how we accelerate our coming together for one destiny, one people, one culture. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Richard to give us a response to how we can intensify and accelerate this, both given his broad development focus, but also from the IMA's perspective. So I want him to be liberal in giving us his own thoughts on what we need to do to intensify this. Richard, thank you.
I would not be as liberal as you think I should or could be. I think for us in the IMA right now and the CBI program in the sub-region, our key task is to stave off Sheriff John Brown. Don't let him kill the seed. Protect and promote the program, and I want to thank the governor of the ECCB for driving the Interim Regulatory Commission that will eventually see all programs properly regulated with common standards. That will help to lower the risk profile of the program, and to my mind, help. It would not be the only thing. Help assure its longevity. And again, we need to cooperate among ourselves some more, and probably come up with some regional strategies for acceleration after this phase of consolidation is ended. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Really, really very much on message. Mr. Christian?
I would say it's a little difficult for me to answer that question, because we've kind of opened up Guyana to a place where we have made so many changes to our investment and tax regime. Imagine coming to one of the only territories on planet Earth that is an oil-producing nation, but still a carbon sink. Yeah. Just imagine that. One of the only places, if not the only places. All of the changes we've made, I think we've attempted to intentionally accelerate investment in the region. Now it is just a matter of sensitizing and how you can benefit from investing in Guyana, because the playbook for Guyana is not to benefit Guyana, but to benefit CARICOM and the wider community. That's the playbook. Now, one of the other things is we're one of the only places that you can still come and buy and own land. We've put a local content legislation in place, which a lot of persons perceive as a barrier, but actually gives you easier access to invest in Guyana. We do believe that there will be a second boom in Guyana. After the electricity price is cut in half, there will be a second boom in Guyana. And to take the best advantage of that second boom is by way of collaboration, by way of utilizing the local content legislation that's already in place. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask my dear brother, Ikembo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's keep it simple. Copy what Professor Arama, President Elumbi, the government of Jamaica, and the government of Guyana are doing, which is you have the capital, raise the capital. So we raised a $50 million fund to invest in SMEs, because once you have capital, you can expedite. And then once you have expertise, you can expedite. The other thing is people give money to people they like. People in the North give money to people in the North. Why doesn't the South-South start giving money to each other so that we can also grow? So keep it simple. I play the role of a local partner. If you're going to do business in Nigeria, you need a local partner. If you're going to do business in the Caribbean, you need a local partner. So make friends. Make friends. So these forums, thank you very much, but these forums are for you to not just go away, get a number, call the person after you leave, and then arrange a virtual meeting, then arrange a visit. I'm going to Barbados after this. I'll probably come to Guyana and see. I will. And so keep it simple and then focus on execution and accelerate. Because you don't have time. Strike while the iron is hot. Whatever they're doing in the North right now is making us get together and start trying to do business. Get together, do business before they figure it out. Thank you.
Dr. Bedal, some final words from you on how we can accelerate, intensify, move more swiftly. Absolutely critical area.
Okay, so we're not really certain who said this, though most of us know this saying. Insanity is the definition of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If we want to address this issue of cancer, which we all have come in close proximity to this, we have to change our approach. And I have assembled a team. We have the know-how, and what we need now is the funding to execute.
I think that is an excellent way to wrap this panel up. But there's only one more thing I wanted to add. I think there's another area which is digital transformation, which we can't get into now because I think it really underlies a lot of what we're talking about here, including the opportunities for artificial intelligence, for early testing for cancer, because it's about repetition and building the data set, the metadata. But at the core of all of this digital transformation is our region's readiness to embrace it. And I think I didn't want this session to finish in Grenada without saying that the CPSO, we've been pleased at the leadership by Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell in this area of digital transformation in the last year. I think we are, I can't get into all the details, now starting to traverse new territory to bring digital transformation to the behest and to the sort of the tablets and the phones of youth and disadvantaged and groups in our society that we need to close the gap on. And I just wanted, as I wrap up, because of the leadership that he's been showing, including, I'm sorry his cabinet missed it, and my people, an excellent delivery at the Canto meeting in the Bahamas on digital transformation, which you should get a copy of. So I just wanted to applaud that publicly and to ask you to give him a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. It's been our pleasure. We look forward to engaging with you outside in the corridors. Thank you so much.